It's
What's going on,
Friday.
Josh?
How's it going?
It's good. Didn't get a ton of sleep last night. Was watching the MLB playoffs. Not a bad problem to have. Sorry, Padres fans. At least you guys made the playoffs, which is not something us Mets fans can say.
Yeah, game
All
two was
good.
great. I had a lot of fun watching game two. I don't know about the other ones, but I don't dislike the Cubs. I root for them. Um, they're on to the next task, trying to beat the Brewers, who have just been a powerhouse this year. So we'll see. But
Yeah,
I love all sports. Baseball is probably the one that I follow and watch the least during the regular season. But when it's like hunt for playoffs or playoff baseball, that almost trumps every other sport for me because there's just something electric about baseball in the fall. So I'm here
yeah,
for it.
playoff atmosphere. There's nothing like it. And I got to give credit. I'm not a Yankees fan, but man, that was one dominating performance last night. 8 innings, 12 Ks, 0 walks, 0 runs. That's whew, it's pretty impressive. I know it's only the wild card series, not like Game 7 of the World Series or anything, but that one's going to go down in the history books.
I agree. No, it's the great time for sports because hockey's starting, football's in swing, playoff baseball. Basketball starts fairly soon, I think. But it's
Mm-hmm.
fall is just the best time of year, and it's just not fair that you can find places that are like summer year round or like cold year round. Like, where is the place where it's fall year round? Because that's where I want
Yeah,
to
that'd
go.
be pretty fun. Don't you live in where it's perfect weather? Aren't you in San Diego?
I wish I lived in San Diego. That's where the company's based out of. So
You're not there. Okay.
I'm in South Dakota where it is the exact opposite and it's the worst weather all the time, except
Oh,
in the
yeah.
so well, we have
All
some
right. Well,
really
we invited a
exciting
couple of
guests.
guests.
Yeah, got some friends coming on. Let's bring them on here. Excited to have these two. So we have Tracy Tobin and Nett Lynch. Hi guys, thanks for
Hey,
joining.
guys.
All
Hi
right.
there. Thanks for having me.
Hello.
If you guys don't know these awesome people, you should, but go ahead and give us an introduction. Tracy, start with you.
Yeah, Tracy Tobin, the CEO at Secure Strategic Technology, shorter version SST. We're a fairly new managed service provider, about a year old now. Team of 6. Vertical is manufacturing space.
I'm Nett Lynch. I am the CISO at Kraft Kennedy, which is an MSP that's been around since 1988, focused in the legal vertical. And more recently, I created a division within Kraft Kennedy called Legion, which is left of boom cybersecurity that is designed for MSP partnerships. So I've been in the IT space for 30 years, the MSP space for 20 years, and focusing very heavily on client strategy along with wearing other hats along the way. So I've been a service desk manager, a project manager, a VCIO, VCSO, and lots of other things in between.
Awesome.
Well,
So
thanks for
wealth
coming
of
on,
knowledge.
guys.
Yeah, wealth of knowledge. I'm excited. So let's dive into these. So the first one's a little technical with some business, but then we kind of get into business operation stuff. So bother with a Wi-Fi survey. If so, how much do you pay for them? I am doing some research into marketing my small business. I do wireless surveys, engineering, deployment work. Now, a lot of end clients seem to not worry too much about surveys, but then you get the odd one who really gets burnt. So I'm just wondering how the MSP community approach is to Wi-Fi surveys. Let's start at the top here. Matt, go with you. And how do what's your answer to this?
Well, I guess it depends on how you define Wi-Fi survey in this case. Are we talking a professional survey, like actually taking measurements, or are we talking somebody like walking around with one of those signal detector tools on their laptop without a real capture card or anything like that and trying to estimate it? Or are we talking somebody just kind of eyeballing things and not really taking, the characteristics of the wall materials or any of that stuff into account, right? There's a lot of different levels of this. Um, For a lot of SMB, like kind of office environments, you can do okay with eyeballing it if you have some experience in this case. For me, it would depend on exactly what we were doing, right? Like if it's a warehouse, I'm getting a professional survey done. If it's an office environment, not so much, right? Warehouses are notorious for bad Wi-Fi. And I don't know about you guys, most of the problems I see with Wi-Fi are too high density, not like too low, right? You look around and you can connect to like 17 access points from where you're standing. Um, so usually it seems to be a problem with people not realizing that walls are thin or that signal traverses sheetrock pretty easily. Then you go to some place like I had a food manufacturer that was a big warehouse, total train wreck. So to me, it's have some idea of what kind of environment you're walking into, and frankly, know your own capabilities. Right? If you can if it's an environment you're comfortable estimating and visualizing it, then fine. But if you know you're in one of those hard to work environments, then get a survey done.
Tracy, how are you handling these?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Matt. I mean, also, I think what applications are using that wireless infrastructure, I think would be one of the things I look at. If it's a, super critical component, maybe inventory control, barcode scanning, these kinds of things, having very reliable infrastructure would be very important to me. And then the space that it's in is going to be maybe a little harder to ensure that it is of high quality. So getting a more of a professional survey done in those scenarios, I absolutely would do that. Like a smaller, maybe managed services customer of ours, it would be maybe 25 employees, more of a professional setting. We would definitely do some kind of a structured assessment and get heat maps so that we support very easily, but we would not have to have the other thing I similar to density APs, you do see these scenarios where I have wide open, but in content and the shelving, blasting the power, like blasting, maxing out the power on these APs, a lot of connectivity issues.
Net, have you ever had to deal with anything on the Wi-Fi land?
Oh, yes, many times. So I think Tracy and Matt covered most of the high points. Eyeball it first and decide if you need a professional to come in and do it. One thing I would add is heat maps can be very important if you're talking to decision makers who maybe you want to get a little out of the realm of technical and a little more into the business side of it. Having that visual of a heat map of what's going to be covered and how strong your signal is going to be in those different areas can help them make the right decision, which will be your recommendation.
Yep. Have you guys ever gotten to play with one of those tools where you get the laptop with all the crazy like antennas sticking out of it and you're making like the waterfall and doing like the heat mapping? They're fun to play with.
Yeah, and I have
Yeah.
one thing to add to Net's ad that is if you're going to like heat map stuff and do the placement maps, please take the time to put the walls in and specify what they're made out of. Like, please.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. And absolutely include anything that you're pretty certain is going to cause interference. That's super important in that mapping as well.
So going.
I was going to just quickly, Josh, in this manufacturing settings that we find ourselves in a lot, there are a multitude of interfaces. Mm-hmm. Super critical on this wireless infrastructure. Having of identifying what those,
So going back then to the original question of how you're handling it. So we said, the age-old IT answer, it depends. That's always the answer. But so if it's something simple or you can eyeball it, I assume that we're not charging. Are you always charging? Are you charging based off of the project scope? Or even if the professional one is, you're walking around with a sweet laptop and doing that, do you just build that into the project? Or if you're just doing the mapping, like how do you guys handle those? And we can do rapid fire here for sake of time.
I'll be really quick. It goes into SOW creation time that you add on to the scope of the project if you're doing it yourself. If it's pro, obviously that's an add-on.
Tracy?
I would agree. Build it into the project.
Yeah, same. Ditto.
All right. Well, there you go. There's the answer. So problem solved. Let's go ahead and go.
The answer, we do it for free.
Well,
Agreed.
I mean, it's one of those though. If you know, and I don't know if this is something that you guys ran into. I know at a previous MSP, we did a lot of project work for wireless, to where they would get different bids. So we would come out and do a wireless survey, build it in. But then if they don't go with us, now that's lost time. So,
Right.
you know, are you charging some sort of fee in that point, or are you just hoping that you win the business and going with that?
I mean, you can charge a fee if you never want anyone to pay you for doing scoping work.
Yeah.
Like everyone says that, like, wants to try that when they realize they lost time, and then they realize nobody's willing to pay those.
Yep. Yep. There's the give and take here. All right. Well, we solved the Wi-Fi issue, so let's go ahead and go on to the next issue we have. Getting remote users back up and running ASAP. So, you know, a lot of our clients have people that work remotely. So they're separated from the office, and sometimes their computer crashes and you can't fix them, get to a working computer. So how are you handling those? Do you have image backups? Do you have, you know, computers ready to go? What is the, you know, how are you guys dealing with this situation?
I'll go last because I stole the good answer
Yeah,
last time.
let's go reverse order. Net.
Yeah, absolutely. So during COVID, the beginning of COVID, most of us were trying to figure this out because we had in office only. For the first time, we're going remote. So from that point forward, it was a matter of thinking about exactly this question. How can we maintain a high level of support for the users that we don't have direct access to anymore? So the general rule of thumb that I was using was keep 5% of the total number of PCs out in the fleet at the MSP office that are on, up to date, et cetera, so we can get them out the door very quickly. So 5% or at least one. And that worked really well. There were very few situations where we had two that were hard down at the same time. So needing more than that, more than one for most average size clients was usually fine.
Tracy, how about you?
Wait, let me finish.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Extra thought.
Yeah.
So I think the key here is to make sure you're charging for that, right? They have an agent. They have all of your agents on that machine. Somebody is maintaining that device. Make sure that you're including that in the total count of, you know, so many loaners or whatever, you know, hot spares that are available as well.
Yeah. I mean, instead of keeping the machine for the end users at our location, and we try to keep them at client location, especially if there's multiple offices. We can't get there in a reasonable time. But making sure is if it's not being, it's being checked in, someone's proactively making sure it's up, all the working. Because in the time of need, you don't want to be doing all that. You don't want to unpatched, unup working everything else that you've been doing. So just being really proactive around those extra devices and having them readily available.
Matt, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, these guys nailed it, I think. I think the only thing I'd add is that if you have a machine that's not hard down, like it's physically failed, if you haven't gone down this road, spend some time going down the Intune autopilot road, just so that if it's a logical or update issue or something like that, the end user can do a reset from inside Windows, or theoretically from a USB stick or something, but that usually doesn't go so well when I've tried it with end users. But if they can still get into Windows, it can save some productivity while you're shipping a new machine out.
Yeah, you stole my answer. I was going to go, you know, as the shirt implies, the automation route, the Autobots, you know, having, whether you're using IME or Intune or Autopilot, you know, just being able to have that computer and then drop ship and bam, it's provisioned. All you got to do is turn it on. So, you know, it takes a bit of time up front to get to that. But once you get to that, then this issue almost becomes a non-issue. It actually almost becomes easier if you're dealing with some weird Windows issue that's taking you 2-3 hours. Well, you could spend 30 minutes just reformatting it and then having all of these provisioning packages download their PBAs and just logging back in. So there is one of those where it's like, maybe it is better to try to fix it, but also, if it takes 30 minutes to wipe and reload, then why not do it? So, lean into that automation route, and that kind of helps with your procurement as well.
So if I can
Agreed.
soapbox for just a second, that gets you, that's really a good road to go down anyway, even if you're not dealing with remote, because it forces you to treat workstations as immutable, right? We all talk about immutable infrastructure as code. You're in the habit of treating workstations that way, which means not doing things during setup that you can't script or automate, and 2, not storing stateful data on them. It makes things so much easier, right? Somebody leaves their laptop on the flight or loses it at the hotel, whatever. The end user doesn't really know the difference, and it makes deployment, these old school, like 4-hour PC setup times where somebody pre-configs it on the bench, that just starts to go away.
You're being too nice. So the terminology we used are servers are pets and endpoints are cattle. And sometimes you just
Cattle,
gotta
not
take them
pets,
out back,
But
Absolutely.
the other thing I'd add is having place on how you do these things, I think, is important, so that everybody on your team responsible for helping out in these scenarios is doing it the same way as the next person.
Absolutely. And I would extend that to say, make sure you're having these conversations with your client as well, and set that expectation that we'll troubleshoot for 1 hour. If we can't get the issue resolved in that time period, we're going to reinstall or whatever your next case is, so that everybody's on the same page and you don't get a user saying, they wiped my computer, right? That happens because they don't understand that their data is all in the cloud. So they think their data is on their PC. Hopefully it's in the cloud.
All right. Well, again, we're solving all sorts of problems today. So let's go on to something that might be a little bit harder, but I love this story here. So, employee training. I jumped before looking and do not know how. So a couple weeks ago, this person got a phone call out of the blue. The guy just lays it out and says he graduated from a local tech college with some random networking degree, and he wants his first real IT job. We've never hired someone so fresh, so I informed him that we were not what we were looking for. We're only 11 people, and we kind of only hire tier 2 or 3. Nonetheless, this guy sent his resume, and I hear someone needing something stated in an email. He realizes he's new. He's just wanting to get started and be happy with any job that paid around 40K and had benefits. So not one to turn down cheap labor, I offered a job on the spot and explained that it'd be a minimum 120 days before we trusted him to even install a pre-configured phone at a client. Since he's got no experience, I could not put him with help desk, as those dudes mainly work from home and fly solo. So I told him to shadow the on-site guys as they respond to tickets. He started a week ago and seems to really enjoy the work, but he's just shadowing all day. He's a good kid, knows a lot of theory, but he's super green. So you can talk about how DHCP works, but he doesn't even know that reservations exist. So the question is, outside of him shadowing the on-site guys, how do we even train him? Has anyone done this? I'm willing to carry him for up to 6 months until he gets his feet, but shadowing is our only real option at the small MSP. So, what are we doing?
See, we're continuing our trend of putting the answer in the question and rejecting it.
Well, Tracy, what are you doing with this guy?
Well, I mean, you have to get what it is you want him to do, right? You can't just say, hey, go website and do this, or go read this book and do that. So I think it's on management to clear path for this to be successful. I would probably have some abilities, find some specific online things that it makes sense for your way of delivering service. Maybe certifications that could help them individually. I mean, I used to be a Cisco engineer back in the day. Studying for certifications definitely taught me a lot. And I learned a lot in going down that path. I still think that holds true to some extent. So I think the person could be a valuable, but management needs to give them a clear path to be, that has all the things.
So the poster said he's going to give him 6 months. So at the 6 month mark, if this guy isn't, able to produce, is that on the employee or is that on the manager?
I think it's a combination. I mean, first, from management, like Tracy was saying, you've got to have a plan. You can't just take somebody and shove them in right randomly. That's not going to make sense. There's got to be a plan to it. This is a situation where within 6 months, this person should not only be exposed to what the on-site people are doing, but just because we're remote doesn't mean you can't shadow somebody who's working tickets remotely, right? We live in a remote world. We know how to do this stuff. It can happen. And then anything that happens behind the scenes, this person can be part of. Anything before it goes out the door to client, they could be incorporated in those sorts of conversations that are happening, et cetera. The other part is we also need to be careful because we're such technologists. We're the problem solvers. We don't want to just do it. We need to also explain what we're doing and why to this person. And even at some points, things that are very low risk, give them the wheel and let them drive, because that's how they are going to get experience. People learn by doing more so than hearing or watching. So a combination of all of those, but within 6 months, you'll see whether this person wants to do it and whether they're asking for more, whether they're showing the aptitude to take in all this information and then produce a good result from it.
Matt, anything to add? Some great answers so far.
No, I think Tracy and Annette got to the core of the issue here, and that is shadowing really is the best way to learn, but it doesn't have to be like literally physically being with them, right? You can share a remote control session. You can work on somebody on setting up a server before it gets delivered. But the only thing I'll add is all we heard is this person reached out. Like, we hired mostly junior people and trained them up until we needed more senior, like as we got bigger. Does this person have the aptitude to begin with? Because training takes a long time and is a big investment. And I would want to spend some time talking to this person and just understanding what they're really looking to do, and if they feel like they're a culture fit, and if they feel like they have the right mindset for how the company operates. Now, maybe this happened, just wasn't mentioned in the OP that I could see. But that's a big part of it to me, just recognizing how big of a time investment it is to train someone up to be productive, right? 6 months, bare minimum, right? Like our engineers, before they could really swim on their own and have a lot of confidence in them, were probably longer than that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of where, I take the combination of, obviously you have to shadow and show things there, but there's also just MSP specific and soft skills that you can get through some sort of, learning management system. Even just Empath or YouTube or Udemy, whatever. IT Pro TV was a good one, but I don't think that exists anymore. So kind of dividing up the time between, learning actual on the job things versus, what they've done in college. But then also it is different. Like if you're looking for any IT job, well, we're in the service industry, so we're going to need more service minded than if you were on an internal panel of those. So kind of leaning into how are those skills developing and how can you assist the team, right? If you are driven and you have those great soft skills, well, maybe you can throw him on phones and he can be some sort of intake or first touch point before getting escalated, so looking at strengths and weaknesses and then figuring out from the manager side, what does success look like at week 1, week 2, et cetera. So I think to me, this was obviously the manager saw an opportunity, but it doesn't sound like they have a formalized training program. They just kind of all right, you're on, throw you into the water and you fend for yourself, right? If you're going to start going down this path, you have to have some sort of learning internal system built up or start to
and really like a resource plan, right? Tied to the business. They obviously no plan here, right? A little bit like you guys remember the Super Bowl shuffle?
Don't
Jim
remember the Super
McMahon.
Bowl shuffle.
Jim McMahon, former Bears quarterback. The Super Bowl shuffle. He would.
Enlighten
Yeah,
me.
when he
I've
would hit
heard
the
of
turf,
this now. Now that you
when he would hit
mention
the turf, he would have no plan.
Yeah.
It's in the Super Bowl shuffle anyway. That's what we don't want to be not have a plan at all around resources, right? Making sure that when good resources present themselves, how are you going to plug them into your business? And is it really something you need? When in fact, maybe he actually needs, instead of a $40,000 fresh resource, maybe he needs a level 2, level 3 resource. What problems is he trying to solve?
Yeah. Great point.
All right. Well, let's continue the conversation about training. So the next thing we're going to talk about is the hardest I teach skill to teach new hires on the team. Something I've been thinking about lately. We can teach people tools and ticketing systems, but certain skills are way harder to transfer, like knowing when to escalate, when to document properly, keeping calm with a tough customer. For those in these IT roles, what's the one skill you wish new hires just got without months of shadowing? So this is a great segue from our old story here. Matt, let's start with you.
I mean, it's probably a somewhat cliche answer, but it's got to be the interpersonal soft skills stuff. That's something that I have found personally difficult to teach. You come in and you either have that or don't. The ability to empathize, the ability to handle the difficult customer, as the host mentioned. If you're talking a technical skill, it's probably the innate dot connecting and logic that comes with troubleshooting, like to really understand how to get to the core of an issue, like, because you require such an understanding of the overall system you're working with, both at the micro and macro levels. But let's be honest, I know it's cliche, but the technical stuff is easy to teach. It's the interpersonal skills, and that's that. There's not. Maybe you guys have found one, can enlighten me. I've never found a good way to teach it. Like, people I bring in either have it or don't.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. It's the one skill that you can't teach. The one thing I think you can do to help it, though, and help it bring it out of people is, starting with good culture, right? If your culture is one of high performance and one of, not always the customer always being right, but always trying to help the customer as much as possible, staying in bounds, then I think it's easier for people to, use those skills and sharpen those skills, as opposed to if your culture doesn't support that, it's going to be harder for those things to shine through. And I would just comment too on the troubleshooting process, right? I don't think you have to be super knowledgeable from a technical perspective to show that you have the ability to troubleshoot things in a very methodical way. That is kind of like, again, a skill that you kind of have or you don't have. It's really hard to teach. You could teach them the technical pieces of it. And obviously the troubleshooting processes get more technically difficult and evolved as time goes on, as they build their skills. But just that the ability to break things down in a methodical way is really hard to teach.
Yeah, all good stuff there. And of course, I'm going to say interpersonal skills as well. All those soft skills. And the reason it's so hard is because you're trying to train people to change how they think, right? That's hard to do. Teaching a new skill, teaching the tech, teaching the tools, that's easy for us, right? We're technical people. We understand that. That's what we gravitate toward. So when I was hiring for various positions, I would do personality tests as part of the hiring process so that I understood at a deeper level. So they're not giving me the answers they think I want to hear during an interview, of how much compassion they really have. How much empathy do they really possess? How well do they communicate based on those results from those personality tests? And I'll tell you, we dodged some bullets, because there are some people who are really good at telling you what they think you want to hear, but in the day-to-day, they're a different person. So that's a way that I help to counteract that. And I say that to say that when I was hiring for technical people, I would hire technical people who had a stronger foundation of soft skills, even if they had lower technical skills, because we can teach the tech much easier, like everybody has said already. So one of the ways that when I've had somebody who's had a specific area of interpersonal skills that they needed help on, I would equate it to something they already know. Like Tracy was saying, there's a certain methodology to troubleshooting, right? Isolation, right? You have to isolate the problem so you know what systems are being affected. For example, when you're talking to people, is this something that this one person feels, or is it something throughout the organization that everybody feels? You would address it differently. And then you get to what's their motivation, right? Are they having pressure coming from somewhere else that we're not aware of, right? It's the same thing when we're troubleshooting issues, we're troubleshooting the person. And sometimes when you can equate it that way, it makes more sense for technical people.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, obviously self plug, I've said it before on the show, but that is what I'm all about. You know, I have a lot of experience in the service industry, and I would give talks on looking to the service industry for those soft skills and how they translate from, you know, the specifics of my restaurant industry background into the MSP world. But one thing to touch on the troubleshooting as well, and this is something I'll give a shout out to Dean. I watch, you know, almost all of his things because he's just great at formulating these, but just leaning into that curiosity, right? All of us nerd out about something that maybe is tech. Maybe you have a home lab, maybe it's not. You know, I bet Matt and I could just really nerd out on the intricacies of running, right? And when you're running, especially longer distances and things start going off the rail, well, now you start troubleshooting, right? So you're like, well, why? You know, is my nutrition off? Is there a rock in my shoe that I've ignored the last 3 miles? You know, maybe I need to walk a little bit, like stretch this thing, right? So you're troubleshooting, right? You're starting with an issue and you're like going through the list of like, what can I do? And then how does it escalate, right? Like, do I need to call it quits? Do I need to eat some food? Like figuring out a logic problem, right? And you could do that with anything, you know, whether you're super into knitting or whatever it is, right? Just lean into everyone has a passion. Everyone is nerd about something. So lean into that and kind of use that to relate to that troubleshooting. You know, if they don't have that curiosity mindset, to me, that's a little bit of a red flag, especially because like it's not all black and white. There's not a process. You eventually have to start diving in and just be willing to have that curiosity lead you to the answer.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, you know, overall, it's easy to teach the tech skills, you know, that's easy, but it's really harder to teach those soft and those interpersonal skills. And to me, they matter way more. And it sounds like you guys are on the same page there. So we'll keep, keep flying along here. So still on the topic of training, but we're going to shift a little bit more, right? So what is the most effective way you've handled employees resisting a new IT policy? So in this example, hey, we're rolling out a stricter password policy at the company, or in the MSP world, we apply some sort of security hardening to a client and they're getting pushback from staff about the complexity and extra time. So how are you successfully balancing those security requirements with user satisfaction? Net, this is your time to shine. What do you got?
Talking policy. I think it's base, and I think a lot of people think that it happens in a vacuum. And I will tell you, the best policies and these are those created with input from heads of functional areas throughout an organization. Because you start getting pushback like this, it can spread. So before you initiate, have those conversations and have conversations with their teams so that you can get this feedback ahead. If I were in a situation where I was at a company and I wanted to increase my security, I would have those conversations first and listen to the feedback. So feedback like increasing complexity, right? Also, because it's not industry best practice anymore, we're also moving away from complexity to passwordless, right? So, but by having those conversations and getting back that there's resistance because complexity or amount of time or whatever, it's going to prompt me to think, well, maybe there's something else I need to look at. Maybe there's another option, because that's a valid concern, right? If you're interrupting by making them, with longer passwords on them, that's a problem. So how do we reduce that friction? Increasing security. So think about that when you're creating these policies. Listen, put pen to paper or type any keyboard, ask questions, because you're going to get feedback and you can address any obstacles.
Yeah.
Tracy, when you want to add on to that, so what do those conversations look like? You know, so your password policy is outdated, right? There's no minimums. You can set it to 1, 2, 3 if you wanted. You walk into somewhere and you're like, you know, guys, this isn't good. We need to get you on at least 8, 14, complex, upper, lowercase. You know, how are you handling that conversation?
I mean, specific to cybersecurity, it needs to be. I think the sooner you can kind of maybe adopt a framework, a well-known set of standards, and embed that into your organization, getting buy-in from the top, having ongoing conversations, continually educating as you're embarking on this cyber hygiene improvement journey, things like this are going to be less of a concern and less of a hurdle. If you, ancillarily handle these things, and we need to do this now, we need to do this down the road, like you're always going to maybe have some difficulties with new policies around cybersecurity. Whereas if it's just part of your culture and you're following a well-known framework and you have buy-in from the top, these things just they're not an issue. At least that's been our experience.
Matt, anything you want to add?
No, these guys nailed it. I'll say one thing that's been effective, and that is to not only include your departments and other users in the policy creation process, but also make sure they understand the motivation for this in the first place. You know, this is often, to your point, that most people aren't doing complexity anymore, right? The NIST guidelines don't specify that anymore, or even passwordless. But if you find yourself under some regulatory obligation where you do have to rotate passwords or have some complexity requirement, et cetera, make that known that, hey, it's a company goal to maintain this compliance, and to do that, we have to implement this. You can even go as far as to say that we don't actually like enforcing this either, depending on the user. Make them feel part of it. Like, be straight with them, talk to them like an adult. And a lot of us in security have a tendency to be that stereotypical guy from the Phoenix Project with the binder. Don't be that guy. Just be straight with them on what's going on and why you're doing stuff like this, and it makes a world of difference, right? PCI is notorious for this, right? Where they have the rotation requirements still, even though it hasn't been best practice for some time. If you are straight with that with your users when the complaints come in, it makes a big difference as to, they still won't like it, but they'll get it and they'll do it.
Hey, Josh, what do you do if you have buy-in from the top down and you're deploying this new policy, but the CEO says, but all this is good except for me? I don't apply.
Well, I mean, you have
That
that
never
conversation
happens.
with look, you're the main target. There's different ways to go, approach it. And the way I do is it's really, person dependent, right? So like what kind of connect with them of, what is the main issue behind it? Is it, you don't want to be inconvenienced? Is it, you got 1 year from retirement and you really don't do anything, but you're more of a board member, like what is that? And then how do you talk with them? So in some cases, I've literally shown him, I've gone through the Microsoft logs and I've been like, hey, these are all of the attempts on your account. You get the most because your name is out there. If you do a dark web scam, like your stuff's out there, right? And it's not like, that's not fear. It's not really FUD in my opinion. It's education and awareness, because they're hidden from all of this, right? Mm-hmm. So just peeling back the curtain a little bit and being like, hey, like this is why we're doing this, right? Or also, setting the, leading by example and all of those things. But just, working with them on figuring out, why not, and explaining just like you would an end user, whether you use the car analogy or whatever. But to me, it's just kind of working on that collaboration, right? If it is, something like, how can we make this a little bit better? Maybe it is the passwordless option. Maybe it's the, a YubiKey, or just trying to make something simple to figure out, what we can work together to do to come up with a compromise solution to get them protected.
Yeah. Awesome.
But, All right, well, let's go ahead and go to our last story. Hopefully Net comes back here. Looks like we dropped off, but I thought this is an interesting one here. So this one comes from a small business, so not MSP or IT, but this has also never happened to us, I'm sure. A biggest client asked for a week of free work. I was about to charge them, but I deleted the email because I can't risk losing them. So, biggest email client asked for small tweaks. Other than the fact this is out of scope, it's a week of work. So, the usual advice is just say no or get more clients, but I can't be the only one who finds it tough when they're most of your income and I feel stuck. I'm leaning towards just doing the work to keep them happy, but I feel it's a mistake. So 2 questions. For those who have done the free work in a similar spot, how did it turn out? And based on your experience, what would you do if you were me right now?
Oh man, grow a backbone, poster. Like that's my advice. So you guys have probably heard me say, like, yeah, if you're talking about an extra hour or two, I'm probably not going to write up a change order for something like that. But a week of free work, you just can't do that. The other thing is, I've said a couple of times on this show or other discussions, you're running a business, and hopefully your clients understand that you're running a business. And when you charge them to do stuff, like, it's not weird. It doesn't have to be weird. Like, it's a difficult concept sometimes when engineers go into and start businesses to talk about finances and money. But you can't be giving away that kind of time, because even if you like make a total exception, hey, this is going to be worth it for the relationship, the same request is going to come in like 2 weeks later on the next project. Like, your time is valuable. And again, I'm not saying like write a change order for an hour or two of extra change. But something that's that out of scope, like, I'm going to go back to my original answer: grow a backbone and charge them for it. Like that's it. Your client's walking all over you.
So, Net, just to bring you up to speed, the story that we're on now. So, your biggest client asked for a week of free work. He's about to charge them, but I deleted it because he's worried that he doesn't want to lose them. So, the advice is, what do you do in that case?
So I think this is a thing that a lot of, like Matt was saying, a lot of first-time MSP owners struggle with, because it's, you want to do what's right for the client. You want to keep that relationship because you want to keep them as a client, especially if they usually pay their bills. But at the same time, what benefit is your company getting? I mean, if you went to your doctor and said, hey, can you do this surgery for free? They're not going to do that, right? You go to your accountant, hey, can you do my taxes for free this year? Nobody's going to do that. Right? I mean, I get like not charging when you're scoping something. That's completely valid. However, if they're actually asking you to do work, I mean, and a whole week's worth of work, are you going to tell your mortgage company, sorry, I'm only going to pay for 3 weeks this month instead of 4? That's not going to happen. So I agree. You should be charging for the work that you're doing. And if I were speaking to this person directly, I would tell them, you don't know your own value, right? Your customer knows your value because they're trying to get you to do things for free. You have to understand that your time is worth the expertise you bring. And it's not about what work you're doing. It's about the expertise you're bringing to this. So absolutely, you should be charging.
Tracy, I mean, it's up to you now. So Matt and Ned have already told this customer to pound sand. What are you telling him? I mean, you obviously want to get paid for your work, but is there anything you can do? I mean, Tracy, I'm going through a hard time. Like, what are my options here? I appreciate a relationship, but I need this done for my business to operate. I can't, I can't pay you right now. What can we do?
I mean, so like Nat said, it goes back to a deeper value-based relationship. This person needs to establish that with all their clients. And right now that doesn't appear to be the case. That tells me then, are they really providing the value that they say they're providing? Are they doing strategic planning sessions with their client base so they can really see the value that they can bring to the table? So they would never ask for anything for free. They would never ask if they really saw the value. And I think they're probably not in the right ways delivering service where the value comes shining through. The other thing I'd say is, if you're so worried about 40 hours worth of work because of this revenue off of this client, then you have a client concentration issue. I'd start solving for that too. So tough love. Sorry.
Tough love again. But that is an issue. I mean, as you grow, obviously this is a smaller business, smaller MSP, but that is an issue you run into at some point. Is if you have a large whale client where all your eggs are in one basket, well, if that basket's taken away, that can be that business disruption. So add that to the roadmap of recommendations.
And usually when when small MSPs can't solve that client concentration issue, it's because they don't have any sales process. They're just waiting for things to slide across the table, opportunities to fall in their lap. And how can you say you're anything growth percentage company year after year if you have no sales process?
That's right. Well, we can be like Dr. Zoidberg and work for exposure. It'll pay off any second now.
Let me add one thing to this. There is also a little bit of a factor to what the history is with this client. Like in your example, Josh, you said something like, I can't pay you right now. Like if an established client tells me they're going to be a week late with a payment, that's not really that big of a deal because I know that they're good for it. If this is somebody off the street that I've been working with for 2 months, much different story. And kind of the same thing with my point before about like, I'm not going to write a change order for 2 hours. Definitely not doing that for an established client. If it's somebody I don't know, I might write one for a 2-hour change.
Well, and Matt, if you are having strategic planning sessions and with a regular cadence, you're going to know if there's maybe a bad time of year, slower season, or something of this nature. And you're going to probably have had those conversations already with leadership within that company. Hey, we're gonna can you not invoice us this month, or like those are gonna, the communication is going to be there, and you'll already know this.
Absolutely.
Great point. And there's so much background on this situation, like everybody's saying, like there's so much situational information that we're missing to really say this is what you should do, or this is what I would do in your situation. And I think if this is a situation where the client is asking like, well, can you just do this for me and not, there's always a way to the client and what you need as the MSP negotiate it, right? Just because they're asking, it's not a yes or no. Right. It's that false dichotomy. You don't have to say yes or no. You could say, well, let's think about this. This is what you want. This is what I need. Let's make sure that we get to a place that's agreeable for both of us. And there's always a path forward. It doesn't have to be yes or no, unless if this is a client that this is habitual, or you feel like it would become habitual, then it might be a situation where they're not a good fit for you. And that's a different conversation.
Nope, and if they're not a fit and you have a good sales process and you have a good sales funnel, you can replace the bad clients with good clients.
Yep.
Man.
Yep.
All right. Well, I appreciate both you guys for coming on and dropping your knowledge. This has been, it's already been an hour. It's been super quick, but you guys nailed it. Appreciate you taking time out of your day to come on and share your knowledge with the MSP community. So now we're at the last part of the show where you get to plug anything you want and we talk about upcoming events. So Tracy, anything you got going on here that you want to plug?
Yeah, we're doing a live incident response experience in La Crosse. Is obviously hard and it's invite only, but I still like to plug it. Supported by IR Games, the IR Games platform, but we're doing a live event on November 6th. So super excited for that, and there'll be a lot of information about that afterwards.
Perfect. Net, anything from you?
Very cool. So first, how can I get an invite to that? Second, just like to talk about Legion for a minute. So Legion was created. I created Legion, and we launched about 6 months ago because the average MSP in the US has 10 employees or less, high level left of boom expertise that can do security advising, assessments, and offensive security, much less having an internal SOC on a team that size with multiple hats and all the things that MSP owners are aware of. So I built Legion to be a partner for MSPs so that we can handle security advising, the assessments, et cetera. And we work in partnership with that client. And there's a lot of benefit to the MSP as well. So if you're interested in talking about a partnership or seeing more about what we do, just hit me up on LinkedIn.
Left to boom. I love it.
Yeah, that's what we do here. So I love the work that you do with .NET and Tracy as well. You know, the stuff that you're doing with your MSP, and we continue to talk about the frameworks and the CIS. It's been really great getting to hang out and get to know you guys over the last year or so. So thank you guys so much. As
Yeah.
far as the events in the space, let's go ahead and see what we have upcoming. So we have PAX 8 Beyond. If you can make it all the way over to Amsterdam here, coming up in a few days. In the United States, we have Kaseya DataCon. We have Channel Pearl in Baltimore at the same time. And then, of course, as always, like Tracy said, we are always promoting IR games. We have a free game the last Friday of every month. I highly recommend everyone check it out. Go to the website to sign up. It is well worth your time. So that is what we have for October. As for me, we'll see you here next week. Matt, any last thing you want to plug or any parting words from you?
No, just thanks for coming on, everyone. This was a good conversation. Actually, I think it was one of our best episodes in the past couple of months. So sorry, Henry, we had a really good episode when you were traveling. Only thing I have to plug is, as most people know, IT Nation's coming up in November. Tickets are still on sale, and I hope to see everyone there.
I will be
Go
there
Brewers.
as well.
I will be there.
Awesome. Well, I look forward to that. Look forward to seeing you guys in person, and we will see you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This has been a broadcast